Have you ever found yourself in a debate, just wondering why it's so darn hard to change someone's mind? Or, let's be honest, even your own? Well, it's not just about being stubborn. It turns out there's some really fascinating psychology at play. Okay, let's dive right in and unpack the science behind why our beliefs are just so sticky.
Think about it for a second. You know that feeling, right? That little knot in your stomach when you do something that just doesn't line up with what you think is right. I think we've all been there. I want you to hold on to that feeling, because it is a huge clue to understanding how our minds really work.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start with a basic fact. Our brains are built for efficiency. Think about it, we are bombarded with information every single second. So to cope, our brains create these little mental shortcuts to help us make sense of it all without completely shutting down.
Now, one of the most common and most well-known of these shortcuts is the stereotype. From a purely cognitive angle, the source material describes stereotypes as a tool. It's a generalization that helps our brain quickly sort people and information into boxes. It's all about reducing the brain's workload. It's a fast way to process the world, though, as we know, it can often be pretty flawed.
And what's really interesting is how these stereotypes are broken down. So on one hand, you have explicit stereotypes. These are the conscious ones, the beliefs we're actually aware of and can talk about. But then you have implicit stereotypes. These are the unconscious, automatic connections our brain makes without us even realizing it's happening. And that distinction, conscious versus unconscious, is absolutely key here. So, these mental shortcuts, they don't just exist in a void. They have a massive effect on how we see our social world. And a lot of the time, they work by neatly dividing everyone into two very, very simple categories, us and them. And check this out. This cartoon brilliantly illustrates a related idea called the just world phenomenon. Just look at it. The smallest fish down there thinks, there is no justice. The one in the middle, there is some justice. But the biggest fish at the top says, the world is just. It's this deep-seated belief that things are basically fair, that people get what they deserve. And while that can make us feel safe, it can also lead us to justify inequality, all based on our own point of view.
This whole us versus them mindset leads to a couple of really powerful biases. First, there's in-group bias. Super straightforward. We tend to like and favor people on our own team. But then you've got out-group bias. This is the tendency to look at people outside our group and kind of think, they're all the same. We see all the nuancing diversity in our own crowd, but we just generalize about everyone else.
And when that preference for our own group gets pushed to the extreme, you get something called ethnocentrism. This is basically the belief that your own culture, your own way of doing things, is the default standard. It's the benchmark that everyone else should be judged against. And this isn't just some harmless preference. It can be the seed that grows into real prejudice and discrimination. Okay, so we've got that our brains use shortcuts and that we love to form groups. So now let's tackle the next big question. Why is it, once these beliefs are in place, they become so incredibly hard to change? Why do they refuse to budge?
The first big idea here is belief perseverance. And you know what? It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's our tendency to just dig in our heels and cling to what we first believed, even when we're staring at a mountain of evidence that says we're wrong.
So what's the engine driving this belief perseverance? Well, this quote points right to it: confirmation bias. The thing is, we don't just go looking for information objectively. Oh no, we actively go on a hunt for evidence that proves what we already think is true. And at the same time, we get really good at ignoring, dismissing, or explaining away anything that might challenge us. Now, all of this leads us to our final, and maybe the most powerful piece of the puzzle. What happens when we can't ignore the contradiction anymore, when our actions and our beliefs are in a direct head-on collision? Well, it feels really, really uncomfortable. And that awful feeling, it has a name: cognitive dissonance. This diagram here lays out the cycle perfectly. It starts with an action that goes against a belief, which then creates that yucky feeling of discomfort. And to get rid of that feeling, our brain has to do something. So let's break this cycle down. Okay, step one. You do something that goes against your beliefs. The classic example comes from this famous psychology experiment where people did a super boring, tedious task. Then they were paid to tell the next person in line that it was actually really fun and interesting. So boom, you've just acted in a way that contradicts what you truly believe. Step two, you feel it. That's the uncomfortable squirm we talked about right at the very beginning of all this. That is cognitive dissonance. It's your brain basically setting off an alarm, screaming, "Warning, warning, your actions and your beliefs do not match up."
Now, your brain absolutely hates this feeling, and it desperately wants to make it stop. So it has two main escape routes. You can either justify your action, tell yourself, well, I had to lie, I really needed the money. Or, and this is the really wild part, you can actually change your original belief. You might start to convince yourself, you know what, looking back, that task wasn't so boring after all. It was actually kind of interesting. Your mind literally changes reality to make your actions feel right.
So, let's bring this all home. Why does this all matter? Well, changing our minds is so hard because our brains are fundamentally wired for efficiency, using shortcuts like stereotypes. We're wired for belonging, which gives us in-group bias. And we are wired for consistency. We filter all new information through confirmation bias, and we will literally change what we believe to avoid the discomfort of cognitive dissonance. It's a powerful cocktail of forces all working together to keep our worldview exactly as it is.
Look, understanding all these mental gymnastics isn't about judging ourselves or other people. It's about awareness. It gives us the power to hit pause, to question our own certainty, and maybe to be just a little more curious. So the real takeaway is this. Now that you know your brain loves to take these shortcuts, which one are you going to try and watch out for today?